Hey everyone, welcome back to Aseens. So in today's video, we are going to start with a new chapter, chemistry chapter, metals and non-metals, and it is a part of your part 1 book, page number 37. So let's get started. Since we are talking about metals and non-metals, first we need to understand from where do these metals and non-metals come from, or what is the basic foundation over here. The basic one here is elements. So elements are nothing but the pure substances which are present on the earth. Like for example, it can be solid, it can be liquid, it can be gaseous. Okay, so regarding elements in detail, we have already studied in our 9th standard the basic understanding of element. So I won't deal with that much in deeper, just the intro of elements is enough, I feel. So these elements are further classified. In order to understand these elements better, they are further classified into metals and non-metals. So we are going to study about those metals and non-metals in this particular chapter. Before moving on, let us have some, a look at some of the examples of metals as well as non-metals, since having an understanding of it will help you to remember the properties and to identify the properties much more better way. So example for metals are nothing but iron, a common one, aluminium, silver, copper, gold, etc., etc. The non-metals, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulfur, oxygen, and again the list goes on. So now moving on, first we need to understand the properties of the metals. Now as you can see here in your textbook, they have given you the properties, in completely activity based manner. Okay, so and here they have not given you in simple words. Again, you need to go through everything. So that is the reason why we are going to consider this table for understanding. The entire explanation for your physical properties is over here. So we are going to just start with this. First, we are going to see the physical properties and then we are going to move on to the chemical properties. So regarding physical properties, when I talk about physical properties, they are nothing but what you see, what you feel. So everything is physical. So the first property which we are going to see is luster. Luster is nothing but the shiny surface. As you all know, metals have got shiny surface. Metals are lustrous, whereas non-metals, they are not lustrous. Only in the case of iodine. So iodine is a non-metal where you will see luster, you will see shiny surface. But in case of metals, almost all the metals are nothing but lustrous, that is shiny. Next, hardness. We all know that metals are hard. Metals are not they are very, very hard. We cannot bend it or stretch it with our, bare hands. But in certain cases, like sodium, lithium, and potassium, they are not hard. These are soft metals. Soft in such a way that you can use a knife to cut it into pieces. Okay, they are very, very soft. You can just take a knife and, you can just slice it out. They are so soft. So only in the case of sodium, lithium and potassium, the hardness is not valid. Otherwise, all the other metals are hard. Now in case of non-metals are not actually hard. They are softer. They are on the softer side compared to that of metals. But only in the case of diamond is nothing but a non-metal. It is, a form of carbon. An allotrope of carbon is diamond. Though it is a non-metal, it is very, very, very hard. And only in the case of diamond, we are going to see this feature. Otherwise, non-metals are softer. Next, state. In what state we are going to find them? Metals are normally all as solids. You won't find any metal in liquid or gaseous form except in case of mercury. Mercury is a liquid metal, and to identify mercury, or to just give a hint here, mercury is normally used in thermometers, the clinical thermometers which we used to have few years back very commonly. So the bulb of that used to have a metal, and that metal is nothing but mercury. So mercury is a liquid metal. Rest all the metals are solid. Coming to non-metal, non-metals are either solid or gaseous. So there is no liquid form here. Solid and gaseous are the features of, are the states of non-metals, except in case of bromine. Bromine is a non-metal which is liquid in nature. Next comes malleability. What is malleability now? If you have a metal sheet and if you start beating with the hammer or something, it will turn into a sheet. That is malleability. So metals are malleable. That means you can beat it. If you are having a block of it, you can just beat it and you can make it into a sheet or a plain paper like. Gold and silver, in metals again, gold and silver are the most malleable metals. Gold and silver, you can actually beat them faster. They are actually a little softer. Hence, gold and silver are the most malleable. That is the reason why we actually use them for ornaments purpose. Okay, we are having other features also of gold and silver for using it for ornaments and giving the name of a precious metal, but among them malleability is one. Non-metals, they are not malleable. That means if you are having a non-metal and if you start to beat it to convert into sheet, it won't convert into sheet. Instead, it will break down into powder or bits. Going on to the next one. Ductility. Okay, malleable and ductility, they all come together. Okay, ductility is nothing but making it into wires, thin wires. Okay, so what we use for your wires and for your electrical appliances, most of them are for your fuse and all the thin wire, wire like thing what you get from metals. That feature, converting a metal into or any non-metal into that particular wire like shape, is nothing but ductility. So ductility is valid in case of metals. Metals can be converted into wires, but non-metals are non-ductile. Non-ductile, they cannot be converted, they cannot be molded into a shape. Next, conductor. Conducting capacity of heat and electricity. We all know metals are good conductors of heat and electricity. Metals, for conducting heat and electricity, we use metals itself. That is for conducting means they will allow heat and electricity to pass through it. So if you are taking a spoon and starting to heat it, a metallic spoon, eventually the heat will reach your rod. Suppose this is my spoon and this is the part, the flattened part, and if I start to heat this, that after some times the heat will reach here. That is a case of a metal because heat is passing through it. Same goes for electricity. In case of non-metals, they are not, they are actually poor conductors. That means if you take a non-metal and start heating it, you won't find the heat passing through it or electricity passing through it. Okay. So here we have got again the best and the poor conductors in metals. Silver and copper are the best conductors of heat. Among the metals, again if we have to choose the metals with best performance, then here silver and copper are the examples. Whereas if you have to choose a poor conductor, then lead and mercury are going to be the examples among metals. Altogether, they are good conductors. As I said, in case of non-metals, they are poor conductors of heat and electricity except for graphite. Now, if I have to show you what are graphite, you can use it for, for your all-out and Mortein, what we use, the liquid, the central rod what you have. Something like this. Okay, so this one is nothing but your graphite. So graphites are used for, they are very good conductors of heat and electricity and they are most oftenly used here. But other non-metals, they are bad conductors or poor conductors of heat and electricity. Going on to the next one, density. Okay, so in case of metals, they are having high density. That means, it is a solid structure. So all the metals, all the molecules or the atoms, they are very tightly packed. In solid, we have got all the molecules tightly packed. So in metals, they are tightly packed, hence the density is high. Since the density is high, the melting point is also high. Only in the case of sodium and potassium, it does not go this way. Since I told you sodium and potassium are not as hard as the other metals, this can be cut with a knife. Their density is also not so high. Okay, rest all the metals have got high density. Now in case of non-metals, they have got low density and low melting point. So see, a density will affect directly on your melting point. Okay, that is the reason why they have given you both together. So in case of non-metals, the molecules, they are not so tightly packed as compared to that of metals. Hence, their density is quite lower, and hence the melting point is also low. Going on to the next one, sonorous. What is sonorous? See here, when metals and metals, they cling together, you are getting a kind of, peculiar sound. When metals and metals hit together, we get a kind of sound, and that metallic clinking sound, what we get, we call it as sonorous. So metals will produce that kind of sound. They are sonorous. When you strike a metal with another metal, you will get a peculiar sound which will make you realize that metal is being beaten together. A bell, for example, the bell what we use in temples and for normal schools and all what we use. So those bells are best example to give here. In case of non-metals, they are not sonorous. You cannot beat two non-metals and get that kind of sound. It is only peculiar and authentically only for the metals. Next comes your oxides. So metallic, this I guess I have already explained to you in acid, bases and salt. Once again a repetition. Metallic oxides, they are basic in nature, whereas non-metallic oxides are acidic in nature. This we have already dealt, this particular clause I have dealt with this in acid, bases and salt. So metallic oxides, if you are trying to check its pH level, then they are going to be basic, whereas non-metallic oxides are going to be acidic. Next, let's start with our chemical properties. And we are going to only study about chemical properties of metals according to your syllabus. So I'm going to just deal with that. So starting with the first one here is reaction with air, or how does a metal react with air or the components of air. So see here, metal react with oxygen. This particular sign is actually for this one. Metal, when it reacts with oxygen, you are going to get metal oxide. This is a common, basic structure, basic skeleton of what happens to a metal when it reacts with air. Now we're going to see some examples here. See a copper, when it reacts with oxygen, we are going to get copper oxide. Aluminium, when it reacts with oxygen, aluminium oxide. Magnesium with oxygen, magnesium oxide. Though these metals are showing oxides on reacting with oxygen or air, their reactivity is not as similar as we are actually, as simpler it is showing through this equation. There are some of the metals who are highly reactive. There are some other metals who are not so reactive. Then there are some metals which are least reactive. They don't react very fast. So depending upon that, again, these reactions might vary. Like for example, sodium and potassium. If you recall, in physical properties, I have already told you that sodium and potassium are soft metals. You can use a knife to cut it. Other than this, sodium and potassium are highly reactive elements. You cannot leave it open in the air. If you keep it open in the air, if I keep it over here, directly it's going to react with oxygen present in the air, and it will form, sodium oxide and potassium oxide. So they are highly reactive. Hence what we do is we actually dip sodium and potassium in kerosene. We keep it stored in kerosene. When you store it in kerosene, they are not able to react with the air, and moreover these elements, they don't react with kerosene. Hence that is a safer way. Going on to the next one, magnesium, aluminium, zinc and lead. They are, their reactivity bar is slightly lower than that of sodium and potassium. They are reactive but not as much as sodium and potassium. So here what happens is, for this particular elements, when you keep it open in the air, after some time they'll form a layer on top of it. Suppose if I am having a magnesium ribbon, they'll form a layer of magnesium oxide around it, or aluminium oxide, zinc oxide, lead oxide. Depending upon the element over here, they will form their own respective oxide on top of it, so that below this layer, whatever element is present, it should not actually, it is preventing the inside element to not react with oxygen. It is preventing it from oxidation, so that it remains safer in pure form. Okay, thin layer of oxide which prevent them from further oxidation. So this layer will prevent the metal from further oxidizing or reacting with oxygen and keeps the metal safer. Next, iron. Iron will not burn on heating, but see here, iron metal, if you are using directly for heating, if you are burning it, then it won't form oxides. But if you are using iron fillings, the iron powder, then obviously it will burn vigorously. It will start to heat and it will start to burn and form oxides very fast compared to a normal iron bar or iron element. Next, copper. Again here, copper will not burn. When you actually heat it in the presence of air, it is not going to burn. But instead it will form a black copper oxide. It will form a layer of black copper oxide, which this black layer will actually show us that oxide has been formed. Otherwise copper is normally brownish in color. Okay, next comes Au and Ag. Au is gold and Ag is silver. Along with that, platinum can also be included. So they are the least reactive elements among the reactivity series. We'll talk about that later. So see here, the first reason was to use them as for ornamental purpose was because they were highly malleable and ductile, and the next one is because of its least reactivity. Since we wear these ornaments, we need not think much of it turning color or being turned into oxide and all. The reason why is because it is least reactive. It does not care if oxygen is present around it or any other elements are present around it. It won't show any reaction, and that is the reason why we use it. We prefer it for ornamental purpose, because as far as years and years of usage, it will also not deter or not destroy these metals. Next, regarding amphoteric oxides, again here, this is already dealt and explained in the previous chapter, acid, bases and salt. So amphoteric oxides are nothing but they are metallic oxides which react with both acid and base to produce salt and water. So these are oxides. See, as I told you, metal oxides are actually basic, and basic does not react with the base, but exceptional cases are amphoteric oxides. These oxides will react with both acid and base. You can make it react with acid, you can make it react with a base, and in both the cases you are going to get the byproduct as salt and water. See, best example here is aluminium oxide reacting with acid, giving you chloride and water. Same thing here, again reacting with a base, sodium hydroxide, giving you a salt and water. Next, reaction of metals with water. How does a metal react with water? When a metal reacts with water, you are going to get metallic oxide along with hydrogen. This metallic oxide, if you again mix with water, you are going to get metallic hydroxide. Metal with water, oxide with hydrogen. This metallic oxide with water, same metallic oxide, when you make it react with water, you're going to get hydroxide. Metal with water is metallic oxide with water will give you hydroxide. Now see here, as I told you, each metal is different. All the metals are not same. Their reactivity series is different. Based on that, how does it react differently with different, with water? In case of sodium, potassium and calcium, it directly react with cold water. Just put cold water around it and the reaction starts. You will get oxide. In case of magnesium, you need hot water. When you are having hot water in your magnesium, then only it is going to show metallic oxide. Otherwise, with normal room temperature water or cold water, it is not going to show reaction. Next, calcium and magnesium, they'll float as bubbles of hydrogen sticking to the, okay. So in case of calcium and magnesium, after reacting with water, that is, what happens is, they'll float. On the surface of the water, you will see bubbles of hydrogen forming, and they'll be sticking to the sides of the surface. This you can see only in calcium and magnesium. Next, aluminium, iron and zinc. This will react with water only if the water is in the form of steam. When water is in the form of gas, that is hot steam, then only this particular elements will react with the water. Otherwise, they will show no reaction. In case of iron, it will react with moisture though, causing rusting. Then lead, copper, silver and gold. Gold and silver actually, Au is gold. So this particular elements will show no reaction with water. If you are actually trying to make it react also, they won't show any reaction. That is the reason why we wear gold, silver, and even copper is used, for your sanitary wares and all, for your taps on your basins and all. For those purpose, we are using copper till some extent. So that is the reason why we are using there, because it's the area is normally flowing with water, and this particular elements will not have any effect of water on them. Hence, we are using this particular elements. Okay, so these are some of the examples here. Sodium with water, sodium hydroxide, along with hydrogen plus heat. Calcium will give you calcium hydroxide. Magnesium will give magnesium hydroxide. Aluminium will give aluminium oxide. And iron will give iron oxide. Now if you have seen here, these two are not giving hydroxide but oxide, whereas sodium, calcium and magnesium have given you hydroxide. The reason behind it is its spontaneous reaction. They react much faster, and as it is reacting faster, the metallic oxide will directly react with the water, in the same water, and form metallic hydroxide. Whereas that is not the case for aluminium and iron, because this two will react with steam. Because see, when it is reacting with steam, it is not having access to the normal water. Hence, you won't get the hydroxide over here. If it was reacting with normal water, after converting into oxide, it was having, access to water. It would have converted into hydroxide. But since in these two cases it is with steam, it is not having direct access to normal water. Hence, there won't be any reaction to form hydroxide. But in these three cases, it will convert into hydroxide because of the presence of water. Next, reaction of metals with acids. Acids in case dilute. That means which is, contaminated or mixed with water. So metal, when it reacts with dilute acid, you are definitely going to get a salt, metallic salt, and hydrogen gas. Okay, only in these three cases, that is copper, silver, and mercury, Hg is mercury. These three elements will not react with dilute acid. Rest all the metals have shown reaction with dilute acid. So you can see a few examples over here, like Fe is nothing but iron, reacts with hydrochloric acid to give you ferric chloride with hydrogen. Same thing for magnesium, magnesium chloride, hydrogen, zinc chloride, hydrogen, aluminium chloride and hydrogen. Okay, So next one is here, reaction of metals with solution of other metal salts. Okay, how does a metal react with solution of other metals? Okay, we are going to see with an example here. This is a metal, iron. So metal is reacting with solution of other metal. Solution of other metal salt. Copper sulfate is a metallic salt. Solution of copper sulfate. So metal salt solution is copper sulfate and metal is iron. So what happens here? Metal A, that is Fe, plus salt solution B, salt solution of a metal, that is copper sulfate. After the reaction, as I told you, this stands for this arrow mark. You are going to get salt solution of A and metal B. That means copper and Fe have changed their places. Fe was free, now Fe is in the form of salt, and copper sulfate, it was in the form of salt, now copper is free. So here what happens is displacement is happening. So what happens here is less reactive metals will actually displace the less reactive metal. Compared to iron and copper, iron is more reactive. If we are checking the reaction strength of iron and copper, iron is stronger in reacting than copper. Hence, it's like, fight is going on, and since this one is stronger, this is going to win and this is going to be removed out. So iron will be replaced in place of copper, giving you ferrous sulfate, and copper will be the individual alone metal. So that was about your chemical properties of metals. Next, let's have a look at the reactivity series, or the elements, how in what proportion or in what method they actually react. What is the strength of their reactivity? So as you can see here, these elements, they are arranged in the decreasing order of their reactivity. So each element's name is given in the fourth, and this is on page number 45 of your part 1 book. Okay, so you can see most reactive, reactivity decreases, least reactive. So starting with potassium, as I told you, these are highly reactive elements. Potassium, sodium, calcium, see here, the reactivity is going on decreasing now. So these are most reactive, reactivity is decreasing, and at the last you can see silver and gold. So as I told you, silver and gold are the least reactive elements. Okay, so this will not react much, very less, only with certain elements only, or certain reactions only it will be undergoing. Other than that, no other reaction it will be showing. But in case of potassium, sodium, this will react with almost everything other than kerosene. Everything it is reacting. So this is what you need to remember in the same order, because in certain questions they appear where you have to decide the reactivity series in case of objective, or in case of your normal questions, practical based questions or application based questions, what they ask. So that is exactly where this particular order will be helpful. So it's best to actually by heart this in this similar manner. So we have already seen about metals, okay, reactions and all. Next we are going to see how metals and non-metals will react with one another. This is where the electron dot structure for the reaction also comes into existence, which is very, very important. So we're going to see the procedure. We have to see for sodium chloride and magnesium chloride. Okay, sodium chloride, as you can see here, we are talking about reaction between metals and non-metals. Sodium is a metal and chlorine or chloride is a non-metal here. Okay, so to start with this, first we need to have a basic understanding of the shells of the atom. Okay, which we have already studied in your 9th standard, structure of atom and all, everything is taught there. So here, as you can see, sodium, its atomic number is 11. And chlorine is 17. So if I have to decide the number of electrons in each shell, as I know, the first shell will always have 2 electrons. 2 Then the successive shell can have maximum of 8 electrons. So since the number is 11, 2 plus 8 will become 10. 10, again 1 electron is remaining. So that will be accommodated in the further shell, that is the third shell. So as I know, this total should be equal to the atomic number. First shell can take no more than 2. Second shell can take majority of 8. And the third shell, since I am left with only 1 electron, so the 1 will be accommodated here. Now in case of chlorine, the atomic number is 17. First shell can take no more than 2. First shell will have a capacity to hold only 2 electrons. So 2. Second shell has the capacity to hold 8. Further on they'll have 8 itself. So 8, 9, 10. So among 17, again 7 remains. So instead of 8, the next electron will have, it since only 7 are remaining, so 7. Now, we all know this is already taught to you in your 9th standard regarding octet structure. Now, what is this octet structure? See here, the first shell can have majority of 2 electrons, whereas the successive shells after the first shell, that is second, third, fourth, fifth, so on, they will have a capacity to take about 8 electrons. So when they are having 8 electrons, that means they are stable. That means they are not going to react with other substances. It's like there is no place empty. They have got all their places filled. So now as you can see here, 2, 8 and 1. So in the last shell we have got 1 electron. So this one is not stable. This has to be 8. Okay. Now same thing goes for chlorine. The last one is having 7. It's not 8, right? So this one is also not stable. So what we need to do is, what actually is happening. Why is the reaction happening? The reaction is happening to gain that stability. Sodium wants it to have 8 in the outermost, and chlorine also wants to have 8 in the outermost shell. So now to make this one 8, either we need to add 7 or remove this one. Adding 7 or removing this one. If we remove this one, this will be the outermost shell. So it's going to look stable. If not, then to this one, I need to add extra 7 to make it 8. Now if I have to see for chlorine again, it's 7. Either I need to add 1 electron or remove all this 7. If I add 1, this is going to be 8. If I remove this 7, this will be considered the outermost shell. Now, talking about sodium, adding 7 is not easy. We need to find the 7 electrons. Who is going to, from where the 7 electrons are going to come? Somebody has to give sodium the 7. And in this case, 7 electrons, getting 7 electrons is not at all easy. But removing 1 is easy. So what will happen is, this sodium element will split. Whatever 1 electron it is having, in the outermost shell, which is causing the trouble, will be removed. After removing 1 electron, when 1 minus is gone, sodium will gain 1 plus. This shows that 1 electron is missing inside sodium. From the natural form of sodium, 1 electron has been removed, and that is the reason why, because of the missing gap, sodium will get a plus sign. Now, this electron is not going to freely move. As I said for chlorine, either you need to remove 7 or add 1. Adding 1 is easy, and this 1 electron we need to get from somebody, and that somebody is sodium. So this electron which is left by sodium will be taken up by this chlorine, and this 7 will become 8. Okay. Though it is going to be 8, it has borrowed or it has taken an electron from somebody else. There is one extra minus here. One extra new electron against nature has been taken. Hence it is going to be a minus because of extra minus electron. Now if I have to show this, in the graphical form, this is how we show electron dot structure. Okay. See here, sodium, chlorine with a plus. This whatever I'm showing here, it is the outermost electrons. In sodium we have got 1, so that 1 I'm denoting here. In case of chlorine, we have got 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. See here, here I have used color pens, but normally when you are writing, when you are actually, writing in your notes or in your exam paper, you're not changing colors. And that is the reason why we are changing the shape. For sodium, I have used, a larger dot. And for chlorine, I have used X to denote electrons. Now, as you can see here, this electron was given to chlorine. This electron is given to chlorine here. And after that, see here, sodium has got a plus sign in a bracket. Okay. And chlorine has got a minus sign. As you can see, all the electrons along with the one dot which you have got from sodium. So this is how you are supposed to draw your electron dot structure showing the reaction between sodium and chloride. Sorry, sodium and chlorine, or metal and non-metal. So now we are going to see the another example here, magnesium chloride. This is also from your textbook. On the next page you have it. Almost the same but slightly different because we have got here multiple electrons. Multiple atoms, sorry. Okay. So see here, magnesium's atomic number is 12. So it's going to be 2, 8, 10 here, remaining 2. So the outermost will have 2. Chlorine as usual, what we have done before, 2, 8, remaining 7 over here. Now see here, in case of chlorine, we know that either we need to add 1 or remove 7. In case of magnesium, either we need to add 6 or remove 2. Removing 2 sounds better because gaining 6 is not at all possible. And see here, metals, they won't take. Metals are electropositive. This we will be dealing in periodic classification chapter. So metals will never take. They are givers. They will give. They are positive people. They are giving to others, not taking. Whereas non-metals are the one who are not giving, who will always take. Okay. So metals will give readily and chlorine will take, sorry, your non-metals will take. So since magnesium is a metal, it is not going to take 6 electrons. Instead, it will prefer removing 2. So see here, magnesium after losing 2 electrons, 2 gaps are empty. So 2 plus. Now in case of chlorine, as usual, it is going to get 1. Okay. So see here, we know that chlorine can take only 1 electron to make it 8. But magnesium has given 2 electrons, right? So what will happen now to this 2? This 2 electrons will be given to 2 chlorines. 1 electron to this chlorine, 1 electron to this chlorine. So Cl minus, Cl minus. Okay, so Mg's formula, actually magnesium chloride is MgCl2. Okay, so because these 2 electrons are given to 2 chlorine separately, and now you can see here magnesium with 2 outermost electrons, chlorine here with its 7, 1 electron given to this chlorine, 1 electron given to the upper chlorine. And after reaction, magnesium with 2 empty gaps and chlorines here. See, I have drawn here 1 chlorine itself with 1 minus and here 1 dot. And as you can see here, I have given here 2. This shows that this thing is present 2 times. Hope you have understood how to draw electron dot structure for the reaction between metals and non-metals. Next, talking about the properties of ionic compounds. Just a while back, we have seen the reaction between metals and non-metals. Reaction between metals and non-metals is actually ionic transfer. That means those are ionic compounds. When do you call an element as ionic or the salt or the combination as ionic? When there is transfer of electrons. As you have seen in case of sodium chloride as well as magnesium chloride, complete transfer was happening. Sodium was directly giving its electron to chlorine. Similarly, magnesium was directly giving its electron to chlorine. So direct complete transfer. After transferring or after giving the electrons, sodium and magnesium, they were not having any connection with their own electrons. So complete transfer of electrons were happening, and such kind of compounds or such kind of reaction when it has happened, we call those kind of compounds as Ionic compounds. So compounds formed by the transfer of electrons from metal to a non-metal is called ionic compound or electrovalent compound. So ionic compound is a common name given over here. So now, what are the properties of this ionic compounds, or what are its nature? So physical nature, they are solid and hard, generally brittle. You know how salt are, they are brittle. Crystalline salts and all. Brittle is something when it is hard and it's having edgy nature. If you touch it, it's like it's going to be, it is very sharp at the ends. That is brittle. Melting and boiling point, high melting and high boiling point. Solubility, that is how do they dissolve. They dissolve in water, that is they are soluble in water. If you add ionic compound in water, they'll dissolve, they'll mix. Whereas they are insoluble in solvents such as kerosene, petrol, etc. That is organic compounds. In organic compounds, they are not going to dissolve, but in water, they are soluble. Conduction of electricity, they are good conductors of electricity in molten and aqueous form. Molten form is when you are actually melting it and it has turned into liquid. Aqueous form is when you have dissolved it in water and given a solution. In solid, if you keep salt directly and if you are expecting it to conduct electricity, it is not going to conduct. It will only conduct electricity in liquid form. And to get liquid form, either you need to prepare a solution of it or you need to melt it. Only in those cases you are going to get it, you are going to actually find them conducting electricity. So that's so far for your part 1 of metals and non-metals. Inshallah, very soon we are going to start with the part 2. Okay, if you have got any doubts in whatever topics I have covered over here, you can feel free, you are free to actually leave a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.